Welcome into NIL Edge, everyone. Today, we are really excited to be joined by Lauren Cherry, who's the Director of NIL Strategy and Revenue Share Operations for the University of North Texas. Lauren, thank you so much for joining us today. And how are you doing?
Sterling, I'm great. I'm excited to be here. As I've told you, I have really enjoyed this podcast and hearing from so many people in the NIL and revenue sharing space. So super excited to be here and chat with you a bit about what we're doing here at UNT.
We joked about this when you and I talked
Yeah,
before, but we should have planned on literally doing this call in person
I
since
know you're down the road.
UNT is literally just 2 freeway exits south of where
Yes,
I'm at right now. But we should have done this at 407 barbecue. But
we could have.
to get this started, you have a little bit of an untraditional background. I swear everybody that we talk to in the NIL
Yeah,
industry does, but can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you got to where you are at UNT
sure.
today?
Absolutely. I always start with, I'm a coach's kid. So my dad was a high school coach. So I lived that Texas high school Friday night football, Friday night lights life, as a little kid. So I always knew I'm gonna end up working in athletics in some way or another. So my background's actually in media professionally. So I started out as a reporter out in West Texas. And like when I was out there, this is kind of when recruiting was becoming more talked about. And I'm going to age myself a little bit with this, but this is when like Twitter was the new thing and recruiting was starting to be more visible on Twitter. And so I started reaching out to websites and saying, "Hey, I'm fascinated with recruiting. My dad was a coach. Like, I used to sit in his office when college coaches would come in and like offer student athletes. And so like this is something I'm real passionate about." And they actually it was the Rivals website. One of the Rivals websites let me cover some recruiting, and then that turned into CBS Sports Digital buying out the website, and I started working for them. I covered TCU recruiting and Rivals, the Rivals camps and Rivals 100, and interviewed a lot of 3, 4, 5-star athletes back in my day. And that's a big part of me. But I got to a point, Sterling, where I was like, this is a lot of fun, and I've covered a lot of great events and a lot of great athletes and a lot of great programs. But having a kid in elementary school, and I'm like, my son's getting older. I don't know if I have a lot more left in me to be traveling the state and covering games as much as I love it. So I wanted to transition more to some sort of operational side in recruiting. And that's actually what took me to Rice. So I was at Rice University. I got a call from a friend of mine who said, "Hey, there's this opportunity at Rice. I know the guy who's going to be the general manager there." And I'm like, I knew Rice was very high academic, obviously very prestigious institution. And I was like, I'll talk to him. And so he connected me with Bobby Merritt, who was our general manager at Rice. And the cool thing about Bobby, which a lot of people don't know, is he had worked in the NFL for 15 years. So he was a scout in the NFL for 15 years. He was a general manager in the CFL for several years. He had worked at SEC school. So like he had very like that true front office experience. And like we used to call it like front office you, because like we had a person in the building who had such vast, experience in that. And so like even prior to the House settlement passing,
Mhm.
recruiting departments and our department for sure, like we were already kind of prepping like, hey, if this passes, we're going to be moving away from just straight scholarship ball, and we're going to be moving into, operating under this cap. And so like
Mhm.
working under Bobby, like that experience, I mean, truly is the reason why I'm now working on this side. Like
Mhm.
working for him and knowing that this was potentially going to pass last summer, I'm like, hey, like I think I want to move into that space. So like when I saw that UNT was hiring someone for this role, I picked up the phone. I'm like, hey, you should interview me. And they did. And the rest is history. And I've been here, 8 months or so, and just really loving every minute of it.
Jumping right into it, can you tell
Yeah.
us about what your day to day looks like and how much it changes, and just a little about your role?
Yeah, again, loaded question, Sterling, and I know I told you that, and I hear that on the podcast all the time too. And it's funny you mentioned that. Like I was actually this morning sitting in a coworker's office, and
Hmm.
someone walked by and they're like, "Hey, Lauren, where are we at with the EA Sports game? Like, where are we at with opt-ins?" And she was like, "EA, y'all oversee EA Sports?" I'm like, "Yeah, we're getting our athletes opted in for the game." And so like every day is truly different, day to day. Like, when it's portal season, we're almost
Yeah.
like this extension of the recruiting department.
Hmm.
Our office, like, we are the ones issuing the contracts. We are the ones getting the players set up with all their payment systems. And then once they get here, we're meeting with those teams and making sure student athletes, like, we're kind of handling that education piece where we're going over, okay, here's NIL, here's rev share, here's what's available to you. So again, that education piece. And then post house settlement, now anytime you pay a player, that has to be reported to CAP. So I
Hmm.
manage the CAP system. I know, I've heard other people talk about that system on here too. So um again, like, there's months we're very portal heavy, and then
Hmm.
kind of in between football and basketball portal in the last couple of months has been more, there's been a lot of collaboration with other departments to really look at the NIL side. Like, where are we at with that? How can we improve? What is our messaging to businesses? Where do we see gaps with our student athletes? Like, how can we create a system that makes sense here at UNT? So again, like, every day is truly different. So one day, again, I could be making sure our players are opting in for EA Sports. Then the next day I'm requesting payments. The next day I'm meeting with our business office because, again, there's so much overlap because we're paying these student athletes. And then again, like, transfer portal with basketball just ended, and we're about to welcome some more basketball players, here at UNT, and we're going to have to meet with them. And so again, like, it's truly just a lot of operational and administrative tasks, all the behind the scenes stuff that goes on that nobody really talks about. So that's kind of what we do.
So, okay, I want to dive into that a little bit more. The stuff
Yeah.
that nobody talks about, especially
Hmm.
at the group of six
Hmm.
level. What would you say are the biggest differences when it comes to NIL between like what you do with Power Four programs and the other programs that you might see in headlines?
Sure. I mean, I think, Sterling, the obvious answer is maybe resources, right? Like, one thing that I did, like, when I got here, I was getting on the phone with people at, the P4s, and
Hmm.
getting on the phone with people who were in our conference and in other conferences. Because again, like, this is a fairly new position at a lot of
Yeah,
places. And post house settlement, like with the CAP system and NIL Go and all these
yeah.
things, like, we're all like building infrastructure almost like as we go, as
Hmm.
prepared as you could be as an institution. Like, we're all learning as we go. And so I think, again, obvious answer is resources look a little bit different, right? So we have to do, the most with those resources that we have. The one thing I will say that I've learned in talking to different people is a lot of the bigger institutions, like, they have a Lauren for every lane. So like, they have someone that's doing payments, they have
Yeah.
somebody that's running the cap system, they have somebody that's strictly NIL Go, they have somebody who is going out and really handling the NIL deal side. So like, when you're at the G6 level, and like even coming from another school in the conference, like, you wear a lot of hats at this level. But at
Hmm.
the end of the day, like, if you're an institution that opted in post house settlement, we're all doing the same thing, right? Like, we're all building this infrastructure. We're all reporting to caps. We're all paying players. We're all issuing contracts. Like, we're all doing the same thing. I just think, again, at the G6, like, we got to have those systems down. Like, we got to have them down pat, because there's maybe not, resources, and
Yeah.
manpower might not be what it is elsewhere.
Now, okay, that I think that leads great into my next question. But like when it comes to resources and manpower,
Hmm.
where do you see are the biggest confusion points right now among fans, stakeholders, or other people that you work with when it comes to rev share and NIL?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest confusion right now is that NIL is this term that is being used to describe all of the financial
Yeah.
happenings in college athletics. So like,
Hmm.
I'll scroll on Twitter sometimes, and even people talking about our school, and they're like, that player got this huge NIL contract. I'm like, no, that's revenue sharing, right? That's institutional. So
Yeah.
I think, like, there's a lot of education that needs to be had on the difference. Like, NIL is that true third party where a
Yeah.
student athlete, any student athlete in college athletics can go and partner with a third party to do a deal. Now, that is post-house settlement. I keep saying that, but it's changed a little because now there's oversight from the College Sports Commission, right?
Hmm.
And that's
Hmm.
NIL. Revenue share is it's institutional dollars. So again, like we talk about the portal cycle, those are the contracts we're issuing to these players. They're under contract. We are paying them. There's taxes, right? They're going to get tax forms. They're going to have to file
Hmm.
taxes because they're getting these institutional dollars. But again,
Hmm.
it's two different things reporting wise, two different lanes, the compliance wise, two different lanes. So again, I think people just they hear NIL, they're like, they're all making NIL dollars when like they're not all making NIL dollars, right? Like
Yeah.
that's rev and again, like that there's rev share NIL, two different lanes, two sides of the coin. So I think people just they clump them all together when like they're separate things.
Okay, so I want to combine that with what you just mentioned with something that you mentioned earlier, which is like
Sure.
turnover season and transfer season, right? How does that, which obviously you play a huge role in that when that
Yes.
time of year happens, how does the portal and how does roster churn specifically affect your role with NIL and rev share?
Yeah, like, we just went through our first basketball portal and
Hmm.
in January that was our first football portal because again this is all new and um it affects my job a lot like we replaced 54 players in the portal, so you're thinking about the guys that are coming in the football portal, but there's also players going out, right?
Yeah.
And when those
Hmm.
players go out, like there's a closeout. It's not just send them on their way, right? We have to report every player getting in the portal to the cap system. We have to make sure, in their contract, like what do we owe that student athlete before they leave, if anything, right? Like if a player gets in the portal, a lot of contracts protect the institution where we're not paying them. You're leaving, you're not going to get that last payment. And so again, like there's just a lot of administrative tasks behind the scenes for the outgoing groups. Like we had athletes that say we're selling merchandise, they had merchandise
Hmm.
royalties. We had to make sure we were closing that out, making sure they
Hmm.
got those payments. Tax forms were given to that group. So there's the closeout of that. And then with the incoming group, we're onboarding them. Like
Hmm.
they've got to get in our payment system. They've got to sign contracts. They have to obviously be enrolled in school. If a player transfers in and has an NIL deal, that deal has to be re-reported. So like it doesn't just
Okay.
travel with that
Hmm.
player. So again, there's just a lot of little things kind of behind the scenes that we have to track and make sure that the student athletes that are compliant and remain eligible and we're managing that. And so when you have 54 new players coming in, I mean, yeah, it's a lot. Like we're like an extension of the recruiting staff, which I love with my background. So but yeah, I mean just the volume of players in and out. I mean, it's a lot for sure.
When you and I spoke a couple of weeks ago, one of the things that I took away was just how candid you were about how not every mean green student athlete like has to be or wants to be involved in NIL, right?
Correct.
Because
Yep.
NIL is, it's a job on top of what these student athletes or what on top of what these student athletes are already doing.
Yep.
So when it comes to NIL, what do you think student athletes underestimate the most when it comes to the work that's required?
Sure. Yeah. So, and where that came from, Sterling, when I got here, one of the first things I did, like I met with our student athlete development because they handle the education and they do NIL education. And one of the first things we did is we sent a survey out to our athletes,
Mhm.
because I wanted to gauge like what do they know about it? Where do they feel like they need more support? Are they even interested? Like, because like you were saying, not there's athletes like they want to show up and play and that's what they want and they're
Yeah.
focused on their studies and other things. We also have athletes from that data who are like, listen, I mean I don't really know the first thing about NIL. I there's things on the news you hear about these big endorsement deals, but like they didn't really know truly what NIL is. And then some athletes were like, no, just that's not for me. Because again, like when you're partnering with a third party, and especially with the CSC getting involved, there has to be deliverables attached to these deals. And not everybody's comfortable getting on camera and, wanting to post content and do that sort of thing. It's just not for everybody, and that's okay, right? Um, but again, like we have really taken the time to meet our athletes where they are. Like that's what we've done, and try to figure out like where their headspace is at and what they know about NIL and how we can serve our athletes here at UNT.
Well, and that leads me perfect into the next topic, which I wanted to ask you about your influencer cohort, right? Which is the
Yeah.
program that you guys have set up for those
Hmm.
student athletes that do want to be involved in NIL. Can you tell me
Yes.
more about the program, what it does, and how you identify the student athletes
Hmm.
that really do want to participate?
Yeah, we're really excited about this influence cohort that we are building out, and it's launching in the fall, so it's not finalized yet.
Okay.
But this all came about because, like I said, taking data from students, um, you know, it's kind of again trying to meet them where they're at. So last semester when I first got here, my first priority, it was so rev share heavy, and all the changes and all the things we had to learn, and that was like priority one. Priority two, when I kind of moved more onto the NIL side, I was going out and talking to businesses, I was meeting with student athletes, um, trying to see like kind of what almost like what the market was for NIL here. And I kept getting the same questions over and over. Like businesses, because again, there's so much in the media,
Yeah.
and a lot of misconceptions are like, well, we've never done that before. Like, I don't think that's for us. We don't have these $1 million marketing budgets. So that doesn't work for us. And then on the student athlete side, when we would find these businesses who would want to be a part of Mean Green NIL and partner with our athletes, the ones that wanted to do NIL, they're like, heck yeah, sign me up. But then they'd be in the office saying, okay, I don't like, what do I do as far as the content? They're asking me how much, my rate is, or, those sort of things, the financial side of it. And so I went to student athlete development. I'm like, listen, I think we almost need to dial this back. Like, we've got to focus on the education on both
Yeah.
sides, on the business side and on the student athlete side. And we talk about misconceptions, Sterling, and like I think because money is such a focus, a lot of people assume the education like that doesn't matter anymore. And I mean, I think it matters almost more now than ever. And so with this cohort, we want our student athletes that have that genuine interest in doing third party deals. We want them
Hmm.
prepared. We want them to have that education. We want them to remain compliant. And we want the businesses who are doing these deals to know that we're investing in our athletes. So they're getting prepared partners, right?
Yeah.
And there's something for everybody. Like um, a story that really sticks out to me, I went and met with like it's a local restaurant. I say local, they started opening up other restaurants in different areas. And when I went and met with this business owner, same thing. He's like, we've never done that.
Yeah.
We're interested. Like, let's dip our toes in the water. And it went so well. He called me and he's like, we have another location at another school in the area. He's like, but they're a P4. So they're probably not interested in doing like they're probably not interested. Well, he called me like 2 weeks later and he's like, oh my gosh, like we're doing a deal there. He's like, there's some female athletes we're doing a deal with, right? But again, like if you're just operating on like, oh, NIL is just those $1 million endorsement deals, like that opportunity would have never come about.
Yeah.
So I think again, like it's been eye-opening, what just getting out there and learn and really realizing what people know about it and the misconceptions. And so this cohort and this network we're building, like we want to clean that up and we want to have clear communication and clear vision on what this is.
Yeah. So you have the influence cohort and you have
Mhm.
the influence network, which
Yes.
I apologize. I believe I said influencer when I asked the question
No,
first, so I
totally fine.
apologize.
I know
Um,
exactly what you meant.
can you go into a little bit more about the influence network, especially on the
Mhm.
business side, and
Yeah,
how that pairs in and kind of
sure.
goes hand in glove with the cohort?
Yeah, and like I was just saying, I think businesses now more than ever, like they want to know like what is our return? What are we getting? I think, again, there's, especially with the CSC oversight, like there has to be a valid business purpose.
Yeah.
So if our student athletes are going out and doing a third party deal, there are going to be deliverables that are attached to that deal. So we are doing not only our student athletes a disservice to say, hey, like we've got all these businesses on board, go out and make content, go out and do some marketing for them. I think businesses want prepared partners. I think they want to
Yeah.
know that our student athletes are being educated by experts in certain areas. That could be, brand development, deliverables, contracts, compliance, all of those things that are very important to make these third party deals happen. Because, again, like I just think we're doing a disservice to our athletes and the businesses too if we're asking businesses to jump on board, but we're not providing the education and the necessary resources for our student athletes to be successful at these deals.
Yeah. One of the things that I thought of, so when we had talked previously, you talked about, athletes coming to you and being
Mhm.
like, "Oh, we love eating at this restaurant, right? We
Yes,
love like or we go shopping here. We love this part of the community." Why is it so important to match the student athletes with their interests, and what does that matching process look like when it comes
sure.
to shaping a deal?
Yeah, and just like that, Sterling. So, one of my favorite deals is Coco Shrimp, and we've talked about. I know you're a Coco Shrimp fan,
Shout
so
out to Coco Shrimp.
shout out to We love Coco Shrimp around here. So our women's basketball team, I met with them last semester. I'm like, hey, what are some brands, businesses y'all really like? And they're like, okay, we go there like every single day. We are always there, and we would love to do something with them. And so, again, met with the owner of Coco Shrimp, and he was like, hey, this sounds great. And what's cool about them is they have like a creative team
Mhm,
already. So like it
mhm,
was great for us because they kind of had a vision for what they wanted their social media to look like.
mhm.
Um, but like our women's basketball team did some marketing for them and some content for them, and it was great. Like you could just tell like this is a place that they love to go. And so, I follow these athletes on Instagram just to, make sure they're posting, and like I don't have to worry about that because they're living at Coco Shrimp. They're at Coco Shrimp all the time. And so that positive experience, like we're now talking to Coco Shrimp about, expanding that to other sports and making it bigger and better. And so that's really what it's about. So I think like when a student athlete aligns with a business or a brand or really loves a business or a brand, like they're going to be more willing to want to like show up and do a great job. And so again, with this cohort, we want to make sure we're in alignment with some of those decisions as well.
While we're talking examples,
Hmm.
we talked about Coco Shrimp. The other business that we talked about that's very heavily involved with UNT athletics is DACU. Can you tell us a little bit more about how they're involved on the NIL side of things, especially when it comes to financial education?
Sure. Yeah, DACU is a great partnership. So this deal was in collaboration with our development team. Our stadium is DACU Stadium, and within that deal, they wanted to do NIL and have some student athlete ambassadors. And it's a great deal because we have in the fall we have our football ambassadors, and then in the spring we had women's and men's basketball players who were a part of this. We had softball players, track and cross country athletes who were a part of this deal. And the cool thing about DACU is, a lot of the people who work for DACU Credit Union are UNT
Yeah.
alum. And so they
Hmm.
are true supporters of UNT athletics. Like you see them at all of our games, you see them at all of our events. And so they are a true community partner. And so we talk about the cohort. One of the things within the cohort is going to be the financial education. Well,
Hmm.
we have a credit union who is one of our greatest partners and investing in our student athletes. And so what better way, to get them even more involved? Another cool thing about them is they have a student money management center here on our campus. So there's a lot of financial resources available to our student athletes through DACU. So I think again, like they're big on local matters. You look at, a lot of our rosters and you'll see Texas and DFW schools all over the place. And so again, local matters is very important to them, and they're partnering with our student athletes, and a lot of our student athletes are from this, DFW area and the state of Texas. So I think it's a great partnership.
When it comes to NIL,
Mhm.
Obviously, there are a lot of big headlines when there's a lot of money involved, right? Usually that
Sure.
money comes from big headlining schools. When it comes to the level that UNT is at, right? In
Mhm.
the group of 6, what are people missing when it comes to NIL coverage? And like what should they understand instead?
Sure. I got a newsletter the other day, and I think the title was something like "The Average NIL Deal is Less Than a Used Honda." So that was the title. And I was like, I got to read this. So I was reading through, and they were talking about just the average NIL deal and what that actually looks like across all, conferences.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, it is not in the $1 million range, right? So I believe it was less than $100. So again, I think I get it. We focus on these big deals, and that's the flashy,
Mhm.
things that you're going to see in the headlines. But true NIL, like some of the most successful athletes in the NIL space are at D3 colleges or D2s, that athlete really learned that I am going to learn to brand myself and partner with these third parties, and I'm going to grow my brand and my presence and get really good at content creation and get really good at, that whole NIL space. So again, like I just think that there is this misconception that NIL deals are all these multi-million dollar endorsement deals, and it's not reality. And I talked about that Coco Shrimp example, how the owner went to another institution and pitched an idea and was like, I don't know if they're going to be interested. It's like they were, and they're doing NIL there, right? But again, like I think businesses think, well, there's not a place for me in this. Like I'm not going to be able to afford that, when truly, like the reality is there's something for everybody. And so again, like I think we're doing our student athletes a disservice when we're not telling the true story of what NIL is. So a lot of the headliners, like those are great stories, and that's obviously things we need to talk about. But there's athletes who are not getting these $1 million endorsement deals, who are killing it in the NIL space and doing a phenomenal job in building a brand that's going to take them, far beyond their years of being an athlete. So again, like I think that's what I would say. Like there's a bigger picture to it all.
I really like that. Wrapping up here,
Yeah.
there's a question that we ask everyone. If you
Okay.
were, to take someone out to a restaurant to give them the most authentic
hmm
Denton slash UNT experience, where would you take that person?
So where we're taking them to Portillo's, okay, because they're doing some NIL with our athletes, or we're heading them to Coco Shrimp, because again, they take care of our athletes. So I'm loyal to the ones who are investing in our NIL. That's where we're gonna go, Sterling.
I love it. And you're not the
Yeah.
first person to say
Yeah.
Portillo's. So
It's right down
I
the
love it.
street.
It's
It's
right
right
down the
down the
street.
street. Yeah. It's
Awesome.
great. Love it.
Well, Lauren, thank you so much for joining us, and go Mean Green.
Yes, go Mean Green. And you have to come see us, Sterling. You don't have an excuse. You're down the road.
No,
So
I'll come right
you
now.
got to come right now. I'll meet you at Portillo's.